Tonight, breaking news as the BBC is accused of another misleading edit of Donald Trump. It's after a report in the Daily Telegraph claims that Newsnight doctored footage. The corporation's confirmed to us it is looking into it. Also ahead tonight, an exclusive report from our Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates as it sparks calls for an investigation into Downing Street's communications chief. We'll bring you all the details and all the reaction. Also ahead, Sir Keir Starmer digs in and tries to protect his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. We're told he won't be leaving his job after claims he was involved in briefings about Wes Streeting. And after a tumultuous few days for Downing Street, I'll be speaking to the Science Secretary, Liz Kendall. Meanwhile, more misery for the government as figures show the economy grew by just 0.1% in the third quarter of this year. Fingers have been pointed at the cyber attack on Jaguar Land Rover. We'll take you through the figures. The government announced it's getting rid of police and crime commissioners in England and Wales. We're told a lot of people didn't even know they existed. So we'll be taking a look at what else the public are in the dark about. Also this hour, billionaire Jeff Bezos' space firm Blue Origin has got a high-stakes rocket launch shortly. It's equipped with a pair of NASA spacecraft destined for Mars. We'll bring you that launch live. Well, blasting into our studio tonight, Dawn Butler and Tom Pursglove, who'll be with us for the next hour. It's Thursday, I'm Darren McCaffrey, live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. A very good evening. We are going to start, though, with some breaking news tonight, and that is that the BBC says it is looking into claims it doctored footage of a Donald Trump speech and ignored concerns raised about the edits. Let's go straight to the newsroom and bring in our correspondent, Emma Birchley, who is there for us tonight. Emma, and this is in relation this time to the BBC's Newsnight programme.
Yeah, but it's the same speech by Donald Trump that we're talking about, a speech he gave in January of 2021. Now, what happened on Panorama this time last year it aired was that a chunk was taken out. It suggested that Trump was going to march with his supporters on the Capitol building and fight like hell. Now, when that emerged, it prompted two serious resignations. The Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, and also Deborah Turness, who is the Chief Executive, or was the Chief Executive of BBC News. It also prompted an apology from the BBC chair, Samir Shah, who spoke of an error of judgment. So that was Panorama. Now we discover that that same speech was edited and shown on Newsnight 2 years before, so in 2022. Not only that, a live guest, after being shown that clip on that programme, then says, actually, you've changed the meaning of that. The next morning, we're told, according to The Telegraph, there was a discussion about this in an editorial meeting, and the concerns that were raised were ignored. Now, there has been a statement from the BBC. It goes, the BBC holds itself to the highest editorial standards. This matter has been brought to our attention and we are now looking into it. But I think what is really important to note is that the timing here is absolutely crucial, because if you cast your mind back a few days, a lawyer for Donald Trump said this isn't on. We need an apology. There needs to be a retraction for what was described as the false, defamatory, disparaging and inflammatory statements. And there was a threat to sue the BBC for $1 billion. And a deadline was given. That deadline is tomorrow at 10 p.m.
OK, Emma, thank you very much indeed for that. Emma Birchley there, join us in the newsroom. Well, we're going to get reaction to all of this. Let's first bring in the MP Tom Pursglove, who is in the studio with me. Tom, very good evening to you.
Lovely to see you.
What's your reaction to what seems like yet another one? Let's be frank about it.
Well, I think, this poses some very serious questions about the BBC's approach to these issues. There clearly should be impartiality running through everything that they do. I think licence payers expect that. Let's not forget the funding model here. This is licence fee payers across the country who, when they look to the BBC, expect to see impartiality. And you look at that original clip from that first programme. I've not seen the offending or potentially offending clip in this particular case in relation to Newsnight, but there should have at least, as a minimum, have been a voiceover that said that this was what Donald Trump said at this point in his speech, and then minutes later, this was what he said. That would have at least allowed viewers to be able to make their own conclusions about what was said, able to thread that together properly and form their own judgments. I think it was a big mistake, actually, and I think the people will be concerned about this, and they're right to apologise if this hasn't been done correctly in this case
Well,
too.
and indeed, you know, we're looking at Tim Davie here, of course, who resigned over this, and we know that also the CEO of News did as well, Deborah Turness, not in relation to the latest allegation, but of course the one around Panorama. And you're right, there will be concerns about potentially this is another mistake, but many will feel that, in essence, maybe with those resignations, this should be put to bed. Dawn Butler is with me as well. And Dawn, this obviously all comes before this kind of countdown, this deadline clock that we're looking at with Donald Trump tomorrow still insisting he wants an apology and that he may well sue.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's other things at play here, right? I mean, Donald Trump sees dollar signs and pound signs, and that's really his priority. I mean, that clip of the doctored speech wasn't actually shown in America. But I think it's really important that the BBC stays as a public-owned broadcaster. I think the problem with the BBC is it needs to go slow. It's trying to catch up with 24-hour news cycle. It needs to... You know, I normally say, like, people are acting like analogue in a digital world. I actually think the BBC needs to be analogue in a digital world. It needs more investigative journalism, and it needs to do it properly, and it needs to do it with honesty and integrity.
Well, the weird thing is, of course, Panorama that's the very essence of Panorama in some regards.
Yeah, well, the Panorama's been in trouble a few times for some of its work and some dodgy journalism. And I think it's changed over the years. So whereas it was a place where you could go and say, right, OK, this is all factual, I think it's changed a bit over the years. But the BBC in the round, which, don't forget, you know, the US are trying to get hold of, I mean, its listenership and its viewership is millions of people, and they want to get hold of that. And that's not great for news.
Well, we will wait and see, of course, what Donald Trump does decide to do tomorrow, and indeed what the BBC does ahead of that deadline. For the moment, thank you very much indeed, Don and Tom, who are with us for the entire evening. But we also want to turn on to the main politics story from today, and that is calls from the opposition parties for an investigation into the Prime Minister's communications chief, Tim Allen. The concerns were being raised after Sky News revealed that the spin doctor owns a minority stake in a lobbying firm and still discusses government activity with a senior consultant at the company in a perceived conflict of interest. Well, the man who has the story is our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, and this is his report.
Politics can be a force for good. We will show that. We've changed the Labour Party, returned it to service, and that is how we will govern.
A promise of change from a Prime Minister who was elected to end sleaze and govern for the country.
But Sky News can reveal allegations of a serious perceived conflict of interest at the heart of Number 10. Let's lay out the story. This man is Tom Baldwin, a journalist, Starmer's biographer and a long-time friend of the Prime Minister. Here, he's speaking at an event 2 days after Labour won the election, held by the lobbying company Strand Partners. And he had just become Strand Partners' strategic advisor, someone who talks to clients about politics but does not lobby for the firm. Now, there's no suggestion that either the firm or Tom has done anything wrong. But who was sat next to him? Well, it was this man, Tim Allen, one-time spin doctor for Tony Blair, and in the last couple of years, chairman and part owner of Strand Partners. But from the start of September, he got a new role. So let's take you through how all of this fits together. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is at the centre of it all. He's close, as we said, with Tom Baldwin, who we mentioned earlier. And here's Tim Allen, now in government. He joined the Number 10 team as part of a reset in September. He's now Executive Director of Communications. Baldwin is an advisor for Strand Partners, as we say. And here he is at multiple events held by the company over the last year, including one in late September this year at Labour Party conference. The company is clear that he's not a lobbyist, and for context, as a long-time journalist, he's also a regular commentator, including on Sky News. 2 weeks ago, he discussed his thoughts on government's planned tax rises.
I've spoken to quite a few of them over the last few days, and the answer is they haven't yet decided. It's a big, big decision. There's a lot of politics in it, and it'll probably go to the wire.
Still debating between number 10 and number 11?
Inside number 11, inside number 10, elsewhere in government.
Now back to Tim Allen. When he entered government, he stepped down as a director of Strand Partners, but he still has a 10% share in the company. Now, I want you to look at this. It's the listing on Companies House. The 100,000 that you've got here, well, that equates to 10% of the company. Some see that as a perceived conflict of interest, particularly as we understand that Allen has had conversations about politics with Baldwin, a man who is paid by the company Tim Allen has a share in. Labour says Allen speaks to Baldwin because he's a journalist. The issue of a perceived conflict of interest is really important because advisers must follow the Cabinet Office Code of Conduct, which says that they must ensure that no conflict arises, could reasonably be perceived to arise between their official duties and their private interests, financial or otherwise.
Labour, on behalf of Tim Allen, said the allegation that Tim Allen has done anything to benefit Strand whilst in number 10 is categorically false. Any interactions with him are in his capacity as a journalist. Strand Partners said Tom Baldwin does not engage in government relations for Strand, and this is not part of his terms of engagement with us. Tim Allen receives no financial benefit from Strand and is not involved in our operations. One member of Labour's ruling National Executive Committee told me Tim Allen should give up his shareholding. Others went further.
I think this is yet another example of the hypocrisy. Labour said that they were going to hold themselves to the highest standards of integrity. They've made a big song and dance about clamping down on lobbying.
Keir Starmer is clearly quite close to Tom Baldwin. Do you think that there should be any safeguards in that relationship, given that Tom Baldwin works for a lobbying company?
Well, when I was in government, if you had people from lobbying firms speaking to ministers, you always had a civil servant in the room who was taking notes. So let's see the records of the conversations that Tom Baldwin has had with the Prime Minister. What have they been talking about?
Demands for answers from across the political spectrum.
What do you make of what's happened?
I think it's extraordinary that someone still has shares who's at the heart of Downing Street. I think there's lots of questions still to be asked.
I've written to the Cabinet Secretary today because this appears to be a clear conflict of interest right at the heart of government.
The man in the background tasked with fixing Keir Starmer's image, now facing questions of his own.
Well, as you can see, Sam is with me in the studio. And Sam, as you put in your report there, Tom Baldwin does appear on the Politics Hub quite frequently. He's decided not to appear tonight to respond to those allegations, but he has been on the BBC. What's he been saying?
Yeah, no, he's a regular and respected commentator on events, so Sky and others have him on. But yeah, he went on the BBC today. The main point that he wanted to get across is that he is not a lobbyist. He called the Sky report shoddy journalism because he said at its heart were suggestions that he was a lobbyist. I would say that was absolutely not what we were saying. The heart of this story is about Tim Allen, the other main figure that you've just heard about, and the potential perception of a conflict of interest because he's got shares in this lobbying company that Tom works for, and the two of them communicate. So that is the heart of the story, not what Tom was alleging. I would say.
And we've also had lots of political reaction today. We saw Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, there in your report, but others weighing in too.
Absolutely. Kemi Badenoch, you just saw. Kevin Hollerake is the Conservative Party chairman, and he's written to the Cabinet Office. And what he's saying is that there's just got, you can see the 3-page letter there up on your screen. And one of the things that he picks up on, I think this is quite interesting, is Tom Baldwin is also friends with Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer hangs around with and spends quite a bit of time with a guy who works for a lobbying firm. But is there any sense that that is policed? Kemi Badenoch made the point that when she was in government, if there was a lobbyist around or somebody who worked for a lobbying company, there might have to be somebody from the civil service around, even if they weren't actively lobbying her, because of the perception of a conflict of interest that might cause. And so what the Tories are saying is, can we have a look at your phone? Can we have a look at your WhatsApps, even from your private phone? We want to see the nature of the communication involving Tom Baldwin and figures in government. Let's see what the government says. My hunch is they don't agree.
OK, well, let's bring in, for the moment, Don and Tom, who are with us. Don, that's a fair point, isn't it? You know, Downing Street insists that this is all above board. And if it is, then, well, let's have a look under the bonnet now.
I think this story sounds like it's being blown up to more than it really is. I do maybe think in regards to the shares, maybe it feels like maybe it doesn't quite pass the sniff test. And so Number 10 just has to clear this up. But this is a lot of political play going on here. You know, you can literally see, like, the opposition sort of licking their lips. Oh, we've got something else that we can...
Let's be honest, if this was the other way around, and we've seen this in the past, Labour would be doing and have done exactly the same, haven't they?
No, there's lots of different things, wasn't there? There was the minister that was having private meetings. Was it Priti Patel that was having private meetings? There was no civil servant there. There was a company, Topping Gurin, I remember, that got millions of pounds of taxpayers' money, and nobody knows what knows what they did for the
You guys are going to be whiter than white.
That's completely different.
Could I just jump in, just on a factual thing? Do you think the Director of Communications in a Labour government should have shares in a lobbying company?
As I say, Sam, I'm not quite sure that kind of passed the sniff test.
So you do not think the Labour, Tim Allen should have?
In this situation, because it kind of feels like it could be a conflict of interest. So, but I'm not fully up to date with the story. So, you know, probably need to give up his shares.
Tom?
Or his job.
Well, look, I'm always a bit old-fashioned on these things.
There was the line of the night, just in case you missed it. But, or his job, I think, just in case you missed it. Tom?
No, I'm always a bit old-fashioned on these things because I used to come on when I was a minister and say that there should be a proper process and we should get to the bottom of these things. But do I think that somebody in the heart of government should have shares in a lobbying firm? Absolutely not. And I think exactly as you've touched on, Keir Starmer, in opposition, set such a high bar that the moment that anybody was accused of anything, the front bench were calling for people to resign. And so it stands to reason that he should take the same approach when it comes to issues in his government. And what we're now seeing is a slalom of issues. We've had the issue with the Chancellor and the buy-to-let property. We've got the current issue that's ongoing around the football regulator that's involving Lisa Nandy and the Prime Minister. We've had the issues with David Lammy in prison. It is one thing after the next, and we're not seeing a consistency here relative to what he used to say and demand of others.
What you're also saying is essentially Labour were as bad as you guys.
No. Let's not go that far. We're definitely not as bad. We're definitely not as bad as the Tories.
I'm not sure that's how people at home see this. The regularity and the drumbeat, issue after issue after issue.
All right. So I don't disagree with people at home are like, this is just Westminster mess and drama, and we've got sort of real issues, cost of living crisis. When I'm knocking on the door, people are telling me about the cost of living crisis. So I do think people kind of want to hear about policies and how their lives are going to change and what's going to happen in the budget, rather than this psychodrama that's just continually...
Just finally on this, Sam, where do you think it goes next?
Well, Labour MP saying that he's got to give up his shares or give up his job. I think that is an important statement from you. I think that we will see whether there's any response to the letters, and we will see whether Tim Allen comes out and clarifies exactly what's going on. But at the moment, there is clearly such infighting in Number 10 and in the top of government more generally that whether it's this or whether it's the stuff that we've been hearing over the last 48 hours about briefing, I just think this government is in a very perilous position, and unless Keir Starmer gets a grip, then things are going to get quite a lot worse quite soon.
OK, Sam, as always, thank you very much indeed, and you can read more on Sam's report, of course, on the Sky News website and indeed the Sky News app. Thank you very much indeed, Sam Coates there. Well, Keir Starmer's having a pretty tough time at the moment, it's fair to say, because elsewhere today he's had to defend his top team, following calls for them to be sacked. Whoever was behind those anonymous briefings that saw the Health Secretary Wes Streeting allegedly plotting a leadership challenge. The Prime Minister says he's been told the leaks didn't come from Downing Street, but insisted he would deal with those responsible.
I've been talking to my team today. I've been assured that no briefing against ministers was done from Number 10, but I've made it clear that I find it absolutely unacceptable. If it transpires...
You're saying it didn't come from Downing Street?
I've been assured it didn't come from Downing Street, but I'd be equally clear that Whether it's this case or any other, I intend to deal with it.
If it didn't come from Downing Street, where did it come from, and will you sack the person who is responsible?
Well, I will absolutely deal with anybody responsible for briefing against ministers.
You still have confidence in your Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney?
So of course I do. I work closely with my whole team. Our focus is on working for the country and making announcements like the announcement we made here today.
Prime Minister speaking a little earlier. We also heard from Wes Streeting today, who dismissed the story as trivial Westminster gossip.
Is it right you received an apology from the Prime Minister last night?
Oh, I'm not. One of the great things about being here in the North West today is you can leave all that silly Westminster soap opera stuff behind. I'm sure that Morgan McSweeney, Keir Starmer and everyone else is absolutely delighted with the news today that NHS waiting lists are falling.
Do you have confidence in Morgan McSweeney?
One of the great things about being here in the North West today is I can leave all the trivial Westminster bubble stuff behind and instead focus on what we are doing, which is the change the public voted for.
Well, as you can see, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is with me in the studio. John, we're on, day 2 or 3 of this, and the focus today kind of on who was behind this leaking, and this guy called Morgan McSweeney. Just remind people who may well not know at home who he is.
He's the Chief of Staff in Number 10. Up until the election, he was basically the campaign chief running the campaign. He ousted Sue Gray, the former civil servant, from the Chief of Staff job shortly after the general election. And he's seen as a Svengali, but he's become the pantomime villain of this whole saga, really, in a bit like the way that Dominic Cummings and going back a few years, Andy Coulson was a few years ago. Both of them had to go, of course. There are plenty of people in Westminster, I'm not sure if Dawn is one of them, who say that...
she's already called for one person to go tonight.
I didn't actually call for him to go.
I mean, my view is that it's a question of when rather than if he does go. I think the writing is on the wall for him. He's lost the confidence of MPs. He should. I mean, I read a great piece by the great Anthony Selden in the Times the other day, who said he should go back to the party, running elections and so on. Who could succeed him? Well, they've already got an oven-ready Chief of Staff there in Jonathan Powell, haven't they? That did the job for Tony Blair. There's a solution for you in Number 10. I should say that Mr McSweeney is letting it be known, as we journalists say from time to time, that he's done absolutely nothing wrong. He's not going anywhere. I can categorically say he was not involved indirectly or directly, one person is reported to have said. However, we're listening to what the PM said just then. He said he's talked to his team today. He said the briefing didn't come from Number 10, and I absolutely intend to deal with it. Well, it seems inconceivable that the Labour High Command did not give the go-ahead for this. Well, if the actual briefing was done by a Member of Parliament or a minister, it cannot possibly have been done without the knowledge of senior people in 10 Downing Street.
I think the suggestion I heard today is that they may have reiterated the point that he would defend his leadership, but not necessarily authorise the attack on Wes Streeting.
Yeah, there's two things there, yes.
We do not know, to be honest, but what we do know is it's a mess, isn't it, Don?
Well, as I say, at the moment, it's almost like open season. I mean, we are getting into the pantomime season, right? So it's almost like open season.
We're already in it, yeah.
Wes Streeting called it the silly season today.
I mean, it is. It feels a bit like that. And I do really...
But isn't the problem is that this has come from... This has not come from, journalists digging anything. It's literally... This story's been entirely manufactured inside government.
So, well, apparently not. They're still trying to find who said it. But... I mean, that to me just shows the inexperience of it all. And those people who think this is like an episode of The West Wing or something, and they're like reading things rather than just like taking the political temperature of what's happening. I mean, at the moment, people outside of the Westminster bubble are not talking about this. They're talking about cost of living, they're talking about schools, they're talking about, children, they're talking about lots of different things, but not this. And I just feel they're getting tired of this psychodrama.
Well, of course. I mean, it was Keir Starmer himself who said, we will turn the page on this chaos. Just briefly, though, I mean, do you think Morgan McSweeney should stay in his job?
I never talk about civil servants or staff. I think that's unfair because they're unable to kind of fight back and speak for themselves. Obviously, there needs to be a full stop in this period of chaos, and we need to move on from this. I mean, I try to say, I like to lead by example. I've done some good campaigns, protecting the title of nurse, clearing up our high streets, you know, putting more tax on the gout dampening. We need to focus on policies that's going to make people's lives better and be more hopeful rather than
Isn't the concern here, Tom, that also this just does damage to wider politics, that people just, they look at Westminster and they just go...
No, I think that's right, because actually it goes in the bucket of just being completely self-indulgent, and that's how voters see it, because all the time that's spent doing this is time that you're not spending on those frontline issues that they care about in their day-to-day lives. But I don't see this getting any better, because when you get onto this conveyor belt, it is really difficult to get off it. It doesn't, to me, feel like there's any political ability to grip this, to bring the handling side of it. And if I was Labour MPs at the moment, and I've been there in a difficult parliament where it feels like the wheels are falling off, people get very jumpy, a lot of them are not going to be re-elected on this trajectory. And the whole thing with Wes Streeting was completely self-defeating, because what they ended up doing was making Wes into an even bigger figure, because he actually put a brilliant effort in yesterday.
Just briefly, Very briefly, the other thing I would say, of course, is the other big winner from all this, as well as Wes Streeting, who had a grin as wide as the Thames estuary, didn't he, today?
Well, he was in the northwest, let's say a Cheshire Cat.
All right, the Mersey
Cheshire Cat.
Mersey estuary. The other big winner is Kemi Badenoch, who's suddenly a force to be reckoned with at Prime Minister's questions. She's had plenty of open goals to shoot at in the last few weeks, and she's getting more and more confident, and she's landing some blows on Keir Starmer.
I think a force to be reckoned with is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that.
You're biased.
John, always a pleasure. John Craig there, our chief political correspondent. Well, a lot of politics, as you can see, going on today. A little earlier, I spoke to the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology. That's Liz Kendall. And I began by asking her about that story we were just talking about with Sam Coates on the lobbying row inside Downing Street. Have a watch.
I haven't actually seen the story. I've been here in North Wales announcing 6,500 jobs for the future in clean energy and in AI. And I've been focusing on what I think the British people want to focus on, which is how are we going to create the jobs and opportunities of the future. I'm sure that all proper processes have been through with any appointments within Downing Street. That's right. We should have those proper processes in place. But as I said, I haven't seen the details of the story. I've been focused on the future of jobs and opportunities here in North Wales.
OK, well, you don't need to know the details of the story just to know on a principle basis, is it a good idea that the Director of Communications for Downing Street has shares in a firm that lobbies government? I mean, that's a pretty yes or no, whether you're comfortable with that or not.
If you allow me to answer the question, the principle is that you have to go through proper due process before anybody is appointed. I'm sure that's happened in this case, as in all other cases. It's really important that people have the confidence that all of the due diligence has been done. But I also think it's really important for the public to know, what is the government doing? Are they focusing on our concerns to get good jobs?
Well, the reason I say this, Liz, sorry, Liz, the reason I say this is because you went, not you personally, but the Labour Party, attacked Liz Truss quite fulsomely in government when she was alleged to have done precisely this. That's why it matters. We did send you this story today.
Don't get me wrong. I haven't seen it. I've been here in North Wales meeting apprenticeships who we hope will get jobs and opportunities in the future. I haven't seen the details of the story. What I know will have happened is that due diligence and proper process is done. You are right to raise that with me. People are concerned that if you come and work for government, you should be focusing on the public's needs and concerns, what they want, not anything to do with yourself. And that is what myself, Keir, Rachel Reeves and the First Minister of Wales and our Environment Secretary have been doing today, focusing on what people are concerned about. How are we going to pay our way in the world? What jobs are we going to create? What are the future opportunities? We must make sure anybody who works for us as government is focused on those issues. That's what they're paid to do.
OK, the other story, and the reason we talk about this story is because it's come from Downing Street itself, which is that the Prime Minister has issued a personal apology, we're told, to Wes Streeting. Do you know what he's apologised for?
I'm sure he will be have said he doesn't want to see these appalling briefings in the media. I mean, I've been around in politics a long time, 15 years as an MP, and probably around 30 years in total working in and around government, these things do unfortunately happen. I think Keir will be as fed up and angry about that as everybody else. He wants to do what he was elected to do, which is to change the country. And I'm sure we've drawn a line under that. I don't know. I don't know what the conversation is.
I'm trying to work out whether he's apologising for not knowing that this briefing was going on, or he's apologising that it was happening under his name.
You'll have to ask the two people who are in the conversation. I don't know what happened in the
conversation. Okay, well then,
let me tell you what I do know about Keir, that he hates all this. He hates briefings. He doesn't want them. He won't have sanctioned them. And I'm sure what he will have said is, let's do what we are paid to do. Change this country, create a better future. Let's draw a line under it and move on. And that's what we've been doing here.
Has he apologised to you? Because you've been briefed against by Number 10.
What for? Do you know what? I am pretty grateful to the Prime Minister that he has backed a big vision for this.
No, this is really important. So you have not raised the issue of briefings against you with the Prime Minister?
No, I haven't. No, because I'm not bothered about that. I'm bothered about the future of the country. I spend every waking hour thinking, how am I going to create jobs? How am I going to create opportunities? How am I going to help businesses grow? Because if they do that, they get the money that they need to put in people's pockets and that we need for our vital public services. I'm not bothered about that. I'm afraid I've got, quite a thick skin having spent all this time in politics. I know what I'm paid to do, and I'm paid to focus on the public and on the future. That's what Keir Starmer, Ed Miliband, Rachel Reeves, myself and the First Minister of Wales are doing today. It's our job. We're going to crack on with it.
OK. Well, I read that this had been raised with Number 10, but let's just finally on this. Do you then disagree with Wes Streeting that there is a toxic culture inside Downing Street? You're a cabinet minister. Do you think there is a toxic culture inside Number 10?
I think there's ups and downs in politics. I'm sorry to be a bit of a sort of, old greybeard, but I've seen all this.
Is being too melodramatic then?
I think there's ups and downs in politics. That's the bit of this job I don't like. I like the bit of the job where I'm cracking on and doing what I'm paid to do, which is create jobs, create opportunities, clean energy, AI, to win the race for the future. I've never liked all that side of it. Don't get involved myself. But honestly, I don't spend too much time thinking about it. What keeps me awake at night is how am I going to give people opportunities? We're in a race for AI to make sure we seize those benefits for companies and for our public services. And that's why, honestly, today, here making this big announcement, 3 new small nuclear reactors, a new AI growth zone in North Wales, creating 6,500 jobs just in this area, in construction, in building future technologies, building companies. That is what gets me up every day, and I don't waste too much time about this because it's pointless.
OK, let's focus on the nuclear power station that, as you say, you're there to announce. It's
and an AI growth zone, Darren. That's a critical part of it. Let me say this.
Yeah,
but
the thing is, this is going to cost. This is going to take 10 years apparently, and it's going to cost £3 billion. I mean, even if it was 6,000 jobs, that's £500,000 each for a job.
No. Let me say what we've been announced today. Firstly, is building these 3 small modular nuclear reactions. We are really leading the world in this technology to really create the clean energy that we need as a country. And we are also announcing today a new AI growth zone, building a new data centre, but also providing the support all around that data centre for businesses to come in, to use that data, to use that computing power to grow their businesses with new ideas, because AI is developing so quickly. That is the future of this country. Let me tell you this, there is no path to better growth and more money in people's pockets and more money for our public services without putting clean energy and technology and AI at its heart. We are having a major announcement today that I think we will look back at and say this was a generational change here. We're going to get going straight away. Keir announced today. Work is already started on the nuclear reactors. We'll be starting pushing that forward next year. The AI growth zone will be up and running soon because we are impatient for change. We didn't wait 40 years in opposition to hang around, and we are getting that going straight away.
It has been criticised by some, not least of all, this is relatively innovative and could get into trouble. But second of all, the US ambassador's got involved in all of this, suggesting he's extremely disappointed by it all. He thinks we should have been a bit bolder and gone bigger.
Well, his job is to back America. That's why he wanted an American company to build a larger reactor. Our job is what can we get going quickest, which is these smaller reactors, and it's through a brilliant British company, Rolls-Royce. So he's doing his job, championing America. We're doing our job, which is championing Great Britain.
But he's also our ambassador, and apparently a friendly ambassador. We're meant to be America's allies. He keeps sticking his oar into our politics. Should he kind of pipe down effectively? Should the United States stay out of our internal affairs?
No. I never get annoyed with people for doing their jobs. It's just I know what my job is. My job is backing Britain. My job is backing our scientists, our entrepreneurs, our engineers. My job is to say, in future, how is Britain going to grow? How are we going to compete? How are we going to create the jobs of the future? And clean energy, powering the next technological revolution, creating the jobs and opportunities of the future is what this government is all about. And today, I am really proud that we are delivering.
Liz Kendall there, the Secretary of State for Science, speaking to me a little earlier. Well, politics is obviously going to feature, of course, in tomorrow's papers, and we've got a pretty dynamic duo looking at the news headlines tonight, and indeed tomorrow's headlines. They will be Tim Montgomery, the former, of course, Conservative, who's now a Reform commentator, and Dorothy Byrne, who's the former head of news at Channel 4. That's from 10:30 tonight here on Sky. Now, there was more bad news for the Chancellor today, with new growth figures showing that the UK economy slowed during the third quarter. The economy grew by just 0.1% over the past 3 months, with Rachel Reeves saying that the disappointing results were in part due to that cyber attack on Jaguar Land Rover. Well, our economics editor, Ed Conway, has been looking at the figures.
The latest economic growth numbers, beneath the surface, a pretty striking story going on here. But first of all, let me just deal with those overall figures. When we're talking about gross domestic product, what is that? It's basically the total amount of extra money we're generating across the economy and how much that's kind of going up or down. You can see these bars at each of recent quarters. And this is the latest one. So this is Q3, September, 3 months to September. This year, 0.1% growth. That's lower than economists had expected. They thought it was going to be 0.2%. And if you take these numbers, and rather than just looking at overall changes, divide it by head of the population, then you get a subtly different figure. Because think about it, we've got more and more people coming into the country, particularly through immigration. And so that extra money that's generated is being shared amongst more people. And so if you do the sums and work out GDP per head, look at how all of those bars shift down. And look at how in the latest quarter, we're not talking about growth, a little bit of growth, we're talking about flatlining. And broadly speaking, economists would look at this and say the economy is going from growing kind of relatively at a decent rate to flatlining right now. That's basically where it is. But beneath the surface, as I say, there's something really interesting going on. And that is basically, if you look, so this time we're looking at the level of GDP and how that's kind of shifting over time. And that, you know, it is basically flatlining. But now look at the car sector, OK? So it's the same story. Cumulatively, how much has the car sector expanded in that period in terms of its total output? And it's done pretty well up until September. And you'll recall Jaguar Land Rover had that terrible cyber attack that took some of their plants offline for a period in September. And look at the consequences of that in the national accounts. So that line goes down incredibly sharply. In fact, we're talking about 28.6%, that monthly fall. And there is not a single month, save for COVID, there's not a single month where we had as big an implosion, for want of a better word, in the car industry. And here's what's striking, OK? So if you take that and beg the question, what's the impact been on overall GDP? There has been an impact. This is the monthly GDP numbers. So last time we were looking at quarterly, this time it's monthly, and typically we don't tend to focus on this because it's quite volatile. But look at this, OK? So that's September. That's the month that the hack started to happen and take out those factories. If you didn't have that big fall in the car industry, what would have happened? Well, that negative, minus 0.1%, would in fact have been positive. It would have been positive. Or to put it another way, the hackers actually managed to put GDP into the red, which is something, as far as I know, has never happened before in modern history and raises all sorts of questions. Worth just saying, that's not the only thing going on. The economy as a whole, so back to this chart I showed you a moment ago, the economy as a whole is basically flatlining, and it's not just the car industry. So services kind of going up, or that's kind of what most of us do, services, that's going up pretty well. But other sectors as well, the chemical sector, for instance, is now about 30% smaller than it was only a few years ago. So all of these issues will be haunting the Chancellor as she comes up to the budget, and they all feed into that bigger picture about how well or otherwise the UK economy is doing at the moment.
Ed Conway there. Well, you're watching the Politics Hub. Up next, we'll be getting the reaction to some pretty important policy, to be fair, the state of our economy, with our panel tonight, Dawn Butler and Tom Purscliffe. Join us in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Sky News and the Politics Hub. Let's get more, though, now on those disappointing economic growth figures with Dawn and Tom, who are with me. I mean, it's really sadly for the United Kingdom, the same story almost year in, year out, and been for a long time. I mean, Labour's number one priority was meant to be economic growth. On that basis, I know we're only 18 months in, but they do seem to be failing.
Well, I think the first half of the year was okay, right? We were the fastest growing economy in the G7 for the first half of the year. The Chancellor said that we're not going to have austerity. We know what austerity does to the country and to people, NHS waiting lists, all of that stuff. So she says none of that. So I think her focus will be in a couple of weeks' time on how do we inject growth into our economy and how do we make people feel better.
Why has that not happened already, though?
Well, I think she's tried, right? It's not as if she hasn't been trying. We've had interest rates cuts, etc. So she has tried. Obviously, things happen, not just in the UK, but globally. And so I think we have to wait to the budget and see what she comes up with, and then we take a temperature test then.
Tom, how concerning is this? Because, you know, there are certain things, I mean, you look at that hack, as Ed was pointing out, literally had an impact on our GDP figures on Jaguar and Land Rover. But let's also be honest, you know, we've been bumbling around pretty badly in terms of economic growth for the last 20 years almost. It's quite concerning.
It is, and I think there are fundamentals in our economy that we need to get right. Now, look, you know, my position has always been that we ought to be trying to cut taxes, that what we need is more people in work, more money in people's pockets to be able to spend in the economy to try and stimulate stronger economic growth. And I also would point to things like major infrastructure projects. We're hearing the right noises from government, but the speed with which those will be delivered
you guys cancelled some of them.
Well, things like, for example, expansion in airports, new reservoirs, new energy delivery is going to be really, really critical. If we can get those sorts of major projects moving forward with all the planning pointing in the right direction, that could really help to drive economic growth forward. But the choices, for example, that were made at the last budget around national insurance has been a jobs killer. What we've seen is companies not taking people on that they perhaps would have done had they not been hit with that taxation. We're seeing unemployment going up. That is not helping to make the country better off.
Yeah. Liz Truss's budget took the country back, and the damage that it did to the country was just devastating, you know, and the Labour government came in after that to rebuild.
Well, some of the economics are worse now.
But also, if you take, like, infrastructure in terms of, like, the green economy, if that was invested in under a Tory government, we would be in a much better position. But they didn't. They cut all of that, and they cut all the subsidies, and that was really damaging to the economy. So all of that's going to take time to rebuild. You can't do that in just 15, 16 months.
You've got to have the fundamentals, and we should be trying to put more money in people's pockets. We need people spending. And putting tax up is not the answer.
Do you accept that if the government doesn't... You know, you said they're trying. They are probably trying to find this growth. I don't think anyone's suggesting otherwise. But if they fail, I mean, it's kind of terminal, isn't it, for Labour?
Well, if they fail, that's like a huge...
I mean, if they fail to find economic growth. I mean, like, they said it was their number one priority. It's what the country's been crying out for decades now. If they don't find it, that's pretty bad.
But economic growth has already started. And in regards to...
But inflation's back up again.
In regards to putting money in people's pocket, we have seen an increase in the minimum wage, for instance, and that's put money into people's pocket. People are actually, although some people are not feeling it, you know, £800 better off than they were under a Tory government.
That's not helping businesses to take people on, is it?
That's the challenge. We were talking about money in people's pockets, and I agree, we need to put money in people's pockets so they spend locally in the economy, and I believe that we should have a wealth tax on people that have assets of £10 million or more. I think we do that. That would bring more money into
drive the
economy.
wealth creators away.
Does sound we might be having a Mansion House tax.
Well, no.
We have got the budget in, less than 2 weeks' time, so we shall see then. OK, we're going to take one last break on the Politics Hub. Up next, aside from the rocket launch that we're eagerly anticipating, we're looking at the police and crime commissioners that will be no more. You could say they're being blasted into space. We'll be getting the reaction to that, and indeed that massive rocket launch from Florida. After the break, do stay tuned.
Coming up on the UK Tonight at 8, the shocking string of failures that left 10-year-old Sarah Sharif trapped with a father that murdered her. I speak to the Children's Minister tonight to find out what the government is doing to keep vulnerable young people safe. Plus, fresh pressure on the BBC amid questions over another programme's editing of Donald Trump's speech on January 6th. And we'll be taking a look at the emails reportedly sent between the former Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. All that and much more to come on the UK Tonight from 8.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash.
Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes. Sky News, the full story first. I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
How difficult is this to police tonight? Off the scale.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents, based in Washington, D.C.
Conor, what did you say to the President? What did you say?
He's had a great meeting with him. He's a great man.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that? Sky News in the UK, why do you think the President should intervene on Iran?
I think Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon is an acute threat to the national security of the United States.
Free wherever you get your news.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week.
There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here. Drama over.
Full stop.
Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor. I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, but now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand,
Wow.
here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK?
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's rang out. People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. Maverick here on the red carpet. I'm so excited,
Hello,
Tom Cruise. Katie Spencer, Sky News in London.
Welcome back to the Politics Hub. Now, the government has announced today that it is scrapping police and crime commissioners across England and Wales. The role will be absorbed into the existing mayors and council leaders in a move the government says will save £100 million for us taxpayers. Here's what the Policing Minister, Sarah Jones, had to say earlier.
The model has failed to live up to expectations. It has not delivered what it was set up to achieve. Public understanding of and engagement with our police and crime commissioners remains low, despite efforts to raise their profile. Less than a quarter of voters turned out to vote for them in the 2024 elections, and 2 in 5 people are unaware PCCs even exist.
Well, Tom, just on this, by the way, I always thought they should be called sheriffs. Genuinely, I think it would have helped people. Police and crime commissioners sounds very Soviet. It was a terrible title. Anyway, Tom, I mean, I think it never really worked, didn't it?
I agree with you that actually the terminology has always been a bit clunky, but there are some fantastic police and crime commissioners. I think about people like
But no
Lisa
one knows
Townsend.
who they are. They don't really have much power.
Barber. No, but it does give a very clear, direct line of accountability around policing and crime issues in a community. And I think reverting back to the police authority type model actually spreads that accountability, where having that focal person with a mandate, and where do you draw the line when it comes to turnout? Because you could argue that many local elections or local by-elections have very small mandates, but we don't say that we shouldn't have local
15%
councillors.
15% is quite bad, isn't it? It's
but
quite
it could
bad.
be improved in my view.
OK, well, given the fact that I think
more police on the street, which is good, right?
We want that too.
Lots of us suggested that lots of people don't know who the Police and Crime Commissioner is. I have to say, I don't know who any Police and Crime Commissioners are around the country at all. It's got us thinking about what else the British people aren't aware of, as we await, of course, this rocket launch they're expecting in the next couple of minutes. But we wanted to ask you a question about what British people don't know. So question number one is how many people actually don't know their neighbours?
Oh.
OK, is it 45%, is it 55%, or is it 65%? Who doesn't know their neighbours?
Oh, I know all my neighbours. Who doesn't know their neighbours? I wonder. I would hope for 40 5%, because I want to get to
You
a
want to be
place-
higher?
I want people to know their neighbours. I think I want to build communities, and I think so. I'm going to go 45%.
So I'm with you. I'd like to think it was the better of the figures, but I'm going to split the difference and go down the middle.
You're going to go 55, and Tom,
Yeah.
you are indeed right on that. I have to say, I don't know my neighbours. I haven't known my neighbours for years, and I'm actually quite happy I don't know my neighbours.
Really?
I genuinely
You're
am.
so unsociable. You like keeping yourself
But
to yourself.
we'll have that discussion in another interview. And yes, as my director has pointed out, effectively, they do say the same about me, that they don't me, and they're very thankful for it. OK, right, here's the next question. Ahead of the last general election, how many under 18-year-olds knew who their MP was? So this is youngsters knowing who their MP was. Is it 30%, 40% or 50%?
All I can say, if you took this survey in Brent, it would definitely be above 50%.
And I used to spend a lot of time going and speaking to the sick forms and things, so I hope that it would be the higher of the figures.
But I reckon I'll go 40%. No, I'd go 30%.
Well done. You are right this time. It is 1-1. Indeed, only 30% of youngsters were able to name their
Must
MP
try
when they were
harder.
asked.
Yeah.
And this is the final question before we go to this all-important rocket launch in the next couple of minutes, which is, and this is an interesting one, most people in the country know, of course, the Earth is round. I can't believe I've just read that out. But how many people in the UK say they think the Earth is actually flat? Is it 1%, 2% or 3%?
I think there's actually a group of people on social media that's called, like, sort of
Flat earthers.
Flat earthers, and this is what they talk about all the time. And I think it's growing. So I'm really sorry. I think it's like 3%.
Well, to be
which is
different, I'll
scary.
go for 2% then. So that we get a clear winner here. For
Well, I think it's fair to say that the answer in the poll is, I'm pretty sure, 3%.
Oh, there you go.
That's actually
There you
quite
go.
high. It's 3%.
Yeah.
So you've won 2-1.
Yeah.
Well
There you
done,
go.
Tom.
Thank you very much.
Well, that ends our quiz and indeed the programme. Dawn, Tom, it's been a pleasure tonight. Thank you very much indeed. Now, as you can see, the rocket is about to take off. This is Jeff Bezos' rocket that is due to take off from Cape Canaveral in Florida, Blue Origin. A big moment. We're going to go now over to Sarah Jane Mee, who's going to continue the coverage of this rocket launch tonight here on Sky News. We are back, of course, on the Politics Hub on Monday at 7. Have a great weekend and enjoy this rocket launch.
T-minus 60 seconds. Range green, AFSS flight enabled.
Hydraulics are started up on the forward and aft. You might start to see the engines gimbal a bit here. They're going to move back and forth, make sure they are nice and clear. And we're going to wait here for the big water. Let's turn it back over to mission control. Let's light this candle. Go, New Glenn.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Tell me the odds. Can't wait to see this booster back on.
Well, we are preparing for launch here on Sky News. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore is watching alongside you and me. And this is third time lucky, Thomas.
Yes, this is Jeff Bezos' rocket taking off very shortly from Florida, taking on Elon Musk and SpaceX. The billionaire space race is about to get live because this is the first commercial launch for this mega rocket, 98 meters tall. It is carrying 2 NASA space probes that are on their way to Mars. Now, he will try also to land that bottom half of the rocket, the first stage, a really hard job, and it's called Never Tell Me the Odds.
It's been held at T-minus 20 seconds, Thomas. What does that mean? It's been fraught with delay.
Yep, so the first attempt at launching this was on Sunday. That was cancelled because of bad weather and also a cruise ship that strayed into the safety zone. And then yesterday they had to cancel because of the solar storm that might have interfered
Thank you again,
with
everybody, if you're
the
just joining
electronics.
us.
And now we're waiting for more information on exactly why they have held the launch now. It had been going so well. They've been going through the poll for the terminal count. That's when they go around all the different teams and they'd all given it the big thumbs up. You can see the ice there on the outside of the rocket. Now, inside that rocket is the fuel, which is liquefied, and to do that, they have to make it super cold. So there's natural gas and there is oxygen, the venting that you can see coming off. That is the inside, the payload. That is the NASA spacecraft that are one of the 2 that are on their way to Mars, where they will be studying the Martian atmosphere, trying to work out why the solar wind has stripped away the Martian atmosphere and turned what was a warm, wet planet into the dry, barren one that we see today has lessons not just for our own planet, but also, of course, with humans going to Mars, they need to understand what's going on in the Martian atmosphere, and this is very much a mission that is going to help us do that. You can see there, that was the 7 engines at the bottom of the rocket were still holding at T-minus 20. Anxious moment.
Yeah, I've just been told that it's been delayed by a couple of minutes because the team are investigating a terminal count abort. Now, I'm going to hold my hands up and say I have no idea what that means. Thomas, I really hope you do.
OK, terminal count is down to 0, which was when they blast off. But if it's an abort, that doesn't sound like good news. We'd need to find out whether this is still saying a hold on screen. And it's normally because they're trying to investigate a problem or potentially problem solve it. It could be some software or hardware. But we just need that information.
It's all gone very quiet on the official feed.
This is NG2. We are at T-minus 20 seconds. We are currently in a hold because we had a terminal count abort. Our team, like I said, is currently investigating. So while everything is getting sorted out, we're going to toss it back over to NG2 on the pad.
So cool your engines, everybody, essentially. Just hold on, not for a minute, but for 20 seconds, perhaps more.